That's a photo of the Townsend Harris 1997 uh, fencing champions. That was right at the end of that match when we were presented the championship banner. And I want to talk a little bit about how we got to that point, and the people that participated in that and that made that uh, event possible, that achievement, I should say, possible. So I have to go back to September 1991 when I returned to Townsend Harris. I walk in the building, the old building. I walk in and I'm greeted by Phil Jones. Phil Jones asks me if I'd like to coach the fencing team. I mean, I just walked in the building. Would you like to coach the fencing team? I said, Phil, I don't know anything about fencing. I've never even seen fencing. He said, "That's okay, Tony. Don't worry about it. You could do it." I said, "Well, we'll talk later and we'll see," because I wasn't at all sure about this, because I had no idea. So we talk later. He says, we started as a club, not unlike I mentioned with the baseball team. It started out as a club, and then after competing as a club for a year, they apply for instatement into the PSAL as a varsity fencing team, and of course they needed a coach. And again, I'm a qualified coach, certified coach, and so he asked me if I would want to do it, and after discussing it with him and him assuring me that the kids know what they're doing, you'll pick it up quick. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine, and so forth. So I agreed, somewhat reluctantly, but I agreed. I'd give it a try. So it was a major learning experience, as you can imagine, the first year, because it's not only is it the actual fencing that you have to be concerned with, and what that entails. I had no idea. You got the personalities on the team that you got, as a coach, you always have to manage that, and sometimes that's not so difficult. Sometimes it's pretty difficult with that initial group. It was somewhat difficult because I didn't really know what I was doing, and they kind of did, but in retrospect, they really didn't. In any case, and then there's also the equipment issue. This is all electrical equipment that you're using. The foils, the weapons that they're fencing with, are fairly delicate electrical uh, equipment, and so there was that. They break, and hey, you got to try to fix them. What do you do? We had very little equipment, so it was all very precious and so forth. So that first year was somewhat overwhelming. Uh, but I got help from a couple of coaches in the Queens division, and that assistance was invaluable. I mean, Gladys Eaton was the coach at Long Island City High School. They had a very good team. She eventually would become the coordinator of fencing. I forget what they called them, but she'd become the one who was in charge of the whole fencing program. She administered the administrator of the program citywide. She was very helpful. And the first time we fenced at Long Island City, of course they beat us 12-0. I mean, it was they just wiped us out. And we came in, we were a ragtag looking bunch, carrying our equipment in boxes, and just and so she, as we were getting ready to leave, she pulled me aside. She said, "Don't." She said, "You don't want to be carrying all your foils in boxes and cardboard crates and so forth." So she took pity on me and she took me back to their equipment room. She said, "Here's a bag, a proper bag that that you can use. Take it. We got a few extra. Take this one. Keep your foils in there, and when you travel, put them in the bag. So at least you'll look somewhat like, a fencing team. So that was Gladys. Gladys was terrific. She was a great support person. Commissioners, that's what they call them. She became the commissioner of fencing in the PSAL. The second coach who was very helpful, and I forget the guy's name, was the coach at Jamaica High School. And he was like me. He was a social studies teacher who learned fencing as he kind of went through this. Like me, he started out knowing little or nothing about fencing. And he learned as he went along. He gave me a lot of advice, kind of told me what to expect, as things are developing. He was very useful. And a couple stories about fencing at Jamaica High School. Jamaica High School, their fencing strip, that's what you call it, where you fence on a strip, uh, was up in what used to be the dance studio at Jamaica High School, which was on the top floor. And I remember walking in the first time we were going to fence there, and I'm looking, and there's this gigantic funnel that was attached to the ceiling. It was all made out of like duct tape. It was huge, and it went into a big trash barrel. So I asked, "What in the world is that?" He said, "Well, uh, the roof leaks, when it rains. So in order to keep the water off the floor, it funnels down into this big barrel, and then they empty the barrel. There was a bathroom that was adjacent uh, to the space, and they would, the custodians would dump the barrel periodically into the bathroom. But that's the way it was in the city in those days. Things didn't get repaired very quickly, so you had to make do. So that was a kind of an odd thing. A couple of years later, we go to Jamaica. They were in our division, so we go to Jamaica to fence. You fenced everybody twice in your division. You did a home and home with them. And so we're at Jamaica, and one of my starters, Mike, I'm not going to say which one. I had two Mikes at the time, but I turned to the team. Where's Mike? And they said, well, he's in the bathroom. I said, he's in the bathroom. Is he okay? He says, yeah, well, his stomach kind of gets to him sometimes before matches, and you know, so he'll be fine. He'll be fine. So Mike eventually came out of the bathroom, and it was in fact fine, but he would get a little nervous energy, let's say, before matches. So that was Jamaica High School, and they were very good. But we passed everybody by. We got better than Long Island City. We got better than Jamaica High. And then our big rival in Queens became Cardozo. They were our major uh, obstacle to getting to winning the division. They became the top team. They also surpassed Jamaica High and Forest Hills, who was very good, and also Long Island City. Van Buren was also in the division, but they were never really very good. So we were fencing at Cardozo, and I felt at that point that we were better than them. And we're fencing at their place, and I'm watching as the match begins, and my kid is landing. Now in fencing, you have we only fenced with foils in the PSAL. In fencing, you have three weapons. You have foils, epées, and sabers, and each weapon is a little bit different. Uh, the rules governing it are somewhat different. There's different target areas and the like. In foil fencing, the target area is like my sweater vest. They would you would wear what's called a lame, which was a metallicized vest over your fencing jacket, and that metallicized vest would be connected to a reel that had a wire that you would kind of pull out. You would attach it to the back of the lame. It would clip on the foil. The fencer had a wire that ran up the arm and came out the bottom, and then you would plug in the foil. You call it hooking up. You'd plug in the foil, and so you'd have this kind of a whole electrical circuit that went from the tip of the foil to this reel, and then ultimately went to a scoring box that had lights on it. If you landed in the target area on the lame, it could be the front or even the back of the lame. If you landed on the target area, either a red light or a green light, depending on which side you were on, would light up. If you landed off target, maybe on an arm or on the helmet or something, the mask rather, a white light would go on, and that would tell the official that it landed off target. Uh, and so before before you start any of the bouts, and there are 12 bouts in a match, the official would bring the two fencers together. He would grab their foils and he would touch the target area to make sure that it was lighting up, the proper light was lighting, and that everything was working. Because these things are very kind of finicky. Sometimes the foil wasn't working, you have to change the foil or what have you. So anyway, we're fencing, and my first guy, he's landing dead target, boom, and the white light is going off, not the colored light. So I stop. I call time, and I ask the official to test them again. He brings them together. He tests them, and sure enough, hit the lame. The colored light goes off. No, everything's working fine, coach. He must be landing off target. So this goes on now for the rest of the bout, and I'm like, am I not seeing? I mean, it's pretty clear to me, and I keep asking to check this. So this goes on, and the official now is getting like, there's something wrong here. These it's not registering, but every time we test, it's fine. So we go through the first half of the match, and of course, Cardozo wins every every bout because their side that's lighting up properly, the other side isn't. And it turned out that when you tugged on that reel like you would if you were lunging forward, the reel comes, that wire comes with you. When you did that and landed on target, the white light went off, not the colored light. When you didn't pull it, you just kept it steady and just tested, it would test okay. So my feeling was, this is not right. Those first six bouts can't count. And the coach on Cardozo, I think her last name was Roginski. She was a phys ed teacher at Cardozo, and she taught a fencing class. So they use their equipment all the time. And she said, we use this equipment all the time. There's nothing wrong with this equipment. There's nothing wrong with this equipment. I'm thinking to myself, if you use this all the time, how could you not know that there's something wrong with it? It was so obvious that there was something wrong in any case. She says, well, okay, so, because we'll use your equipment because you always bring your stuff with you in case there's a problem with the other. So we switch to my stuff, and of course we win whatever, 5 of the next 6 bouts, and we lose 7-5. I protest, and the protest was upheld, and we had a fence a second time, or actually a third time, and we beat them that second time around. Gladys, invalidated that first bout based not on what I said, but based on the report that she got from the official on the scene that there was clearly something wrong with their equipment. So I wasn't too happy with Coach Roginski because that was really out of bounds. She later, my daughter Amanda, Stephanie as well, went to Cardozo, and Coach Radzinski tried to recruit my daughter Amanda to join the fencing team, figuring if she's my daughter, she must be a pretty good fencer. She didn't join the fencing team, and I don't think she, as I recall, she never actually fenced. Uh, in any case, uh, we would beat Cardozo twice that year, and we won our first Queens uh, championship. Here's the photo of our championship jacket. That was 1994. The front of the jacket is hanging over my left shoulder. That was designed by one of our managers, Sylvia Yu. She did the artwork for it. The design was hers. It was just a terrific thing, and it was a very proud moment for all of us because we went from being this ragtag bunch in 1991 to 1994, winning the Queen's Championship, going into the citywide playoffs, and losing in the first round the first couple of years, but from the humblest of beginnings, we did pretty well. Now, one of the key guys on the championship team in '94, and then on our we won the Queen's Championship every year after that, '95, '96, '97, '98. We won the Queen's Championship. No doubt, we were the best team in Queens. And one of the key guys was George Motakis. Here's a picture with where you're going to see George. This picture was from 1996 playoffs at Bronx High School of Science. George was a very good fencer, and also the most polite, mild-mannered person I mean you would ever meet. Uh, just a nice young man. And one day in practice, uh, George is on the strip and something happens that angers him. And he starts fencing angry. And he was like transformed into this, I don't know what, just this animal on the strip. And at the end of that incident on the strip where he was fencing like a maniac, I pulled him aside and I said, "That's the George we need every time. It can't just be once in a while. You got to be that guy on the strip." And from that point forward, we would get to a match wherever we were playing, whether it was home or away, and the team would get dressed. They'd put on their fencing pants and their fencing vests, jackets rather, and then they would put their masks on, when they're ready to get onto the strip. Not George. George would get dressed and he'd put his mask on. And once he put that mask on, he was no longer nice George. He became the animal George. And he was extraordinarily intimidating. Kids on the other teams were fearful of George, and you would hear him talking. What's wrong with this guy? And so he was this kind of legendary figure for a couple of years in Queens BSAL fencing circles. But one time he was when he was fencing, he lunged, he landed right on target, and the foils have a kind of a bend to them. They're somewhat flexible. So he landed hard, and the foil snapped, and he was able to stop his forward momentum. I mean, about so far from the person's chest, and at that point it was a jagged piece of metal that if he would have continued on, he would have stabbed the kid right in the chest. So he was able to stop. So that was a bit of a scary moment. Now, back to Cardozo. I never forgot about the cheating incident at Cardozo and wanted to get my pound of flesh. And so 1997, we were going to have a home match against Cardozo. They were very good, but we were much better. And I knew we were going to beat them. And I wanted a crowd of people in the gym because, fencing, hardly anybody, shows up for fencing matches. Some parents will come, couple will come, and a couple of kids might stay to watch, but you wouldn't get too many people. And at Townsend Harris, we would use the back part of the gym. There was a curtain that kind of sealed it off. That's where we put our fencing strip, and that's where we practiced, and that's where we competed. Uh, but I wanted the main gym for the Cardozo match, and we could just put a strip down on the basketball court using adhesive tape. We could lay it out, no problem. And so Wanda Nix agreed, and we set up the scoreboard to keep to post the scores of each individual uh, bout in the match. And in order to get a crowd in those days, this we fenced in the fall. So in the fall, one of the things I did at Townsend Harris was I was writing college recommendations. Kids would ask me to write them a college recommendation, and there would be times where I would write for like 75 kids, write a letter of recommendation for them. And it was a lot of work, but it was part of what I had to do, and I was happy to do it. But that year, I said to every kid that asked me for a college recommendation, I told them I'll write your recommendation under one condition: that you come to this fencing match on this date against Cardozo, and you bring at least two friends with you, because I want a crowd of people at that match. And the Townsend Harris kids, the seniors, they came through for me big time. The gym was packed, packed. And it just so happened that Gladys Eaton stopped by because she would go around to the different matches to see what's going. So she wanted to stop by to see Townsend Harris and Cardozo, fence at Townsend Harris, and she was amazed. I mean, you never see this. The gym was packed like it was a basketball game. Kids were cheering. No one really knew what they were looking at, but kids were cheering. They were having a great time, and we wiped them out. I forget what the final score was, but we beat them convincingly, and I had no doubt that we were gonna beat them. So Coach Rajinski wasn't so happy that there was this big crowd of kids there, and then we wiped them out. So I got a little bit got a little bit back at her for that particular incident. All right, now I want to kind of talk about the 1997 uh, championship team. Uh, here's a photo of them uh, after they won the championship. So that photo was taken at Long Island City High School. That's where we fenced for the championship that year. We began that season uh, with high expectations, no question. We had been in the playoffs the last couple of years. I had a nice kind of a solid group of fencers, four seniors, two juniors. So we had experience, and we were pretty solid top to bottom. You divide your fencing team into three groups: two A's, two B fencers, and two C fencers. And then in a match, my two A fencers would fence against their two A fencers, the B's against the B's, the C's against the C's, and so forth. And it's 12 bouts, and if you win 7 bouts, you win the match. If it's 6-6, then the two top fencers fence off, and whoever wins the match. So I was pretty confident that we were going to do very well. And I kind of pushed them. I pushed that team pretty hard because I wanted to win, and I made no bones about it. I remember taking them out from where we would fence out into the main gym and pointing up. We had one championship banner at Townsend Harris, and that was the girls volleyball team that Wanda Nix coached. Uh, and I pointed to that banner and I said, I want one. I want one. I want one hanging up there for the fencing team. And I think this is our year to do it. So I was going to ride them pretty hard. There were times where I told them they were terrible. This is awful. You guys stink. What's wrong with you? And then there were other times where I told them how terrific they were, how great they were. Nobody's going to beat them. This is our year. We went to the first round of the playoffs. This was Gladys's idea. She brought all the playoff teams from all across the city to Riverbank Park in Manhattan, and they had a beautiful indoor facility, multi sport facility, and they had set up fencing strips, a whole bunch of them, and it's a double elimination tournament. So in that first round, every team there was going to fence twice. And then a whole bunch of teams are going to get eliminated that first day, and so she had seeded the teams one through whatever. I forget how many schools there were, and we were undefeated, and she seeded us either second or third. I thought we should have been seeded first. She seeded us either second or third. And I remember pulling the team aside and say, you see, we're not going to get any respect from the PSAL. We're not going to get anything from anybody. If we're going to win this championship, we're going to have to go out there and take it because no one's going to give us any benefit of any doubt. So we have to go take it. I gave him a speech kind of like that. So we went ahead and and ultimately we would we would win, but not without a little bit of controversy along the way, because we did lose a match along the way to our rival Forest Hills. Uh, but it was a double elimination tournament. They also lost a match along the way, I think the Bronx Science, and then ultimately we fenced Forest Hills for the championship. And of course we beat them, and I knew we were going to beat them. I just knew we were going to beat them. I remember before that match, guys were warming up. Debbie Miklowitz, who was very important to the team. Her son Mike was one of my A fencers on that team, and she would come to every match, and she was like the team mother. She would bring with her a bag full of juices and energy bars, protein bars, fresh fruit, all that kind of good stuff for the kids to eat. And that was kind of very important that first night at Riverbank Park, because we were there for a while, and so the kids had stuff to eat, juice and so forth. And Debbie's mother also really helped the team. We had these old fencing jackets. The fencing jackets they zipper in the back, and it had a whole bunch of jackets that didn't have zipper, or the zippers were broken. So we'd put the jacket on the kid, then we would use masking tape, and we would wrap the kid with masking tape to hold the jackets on. So Debbie took up all the jackets that were broke. She brought them home. Her mother then sewed uh, zippers into all the jackets that needed them. So things like that. I mean, it sounds little, but it's a big deal for me, because it just made things easier for me. It made us look kind of better. Jackets that were taped shut. So Debbie called me over before the match at Long Island City, and she said, "Tony, I just want you to know, no matter what happens today." And I stopped her. I said, "What do you mean? What happened?" "I'll tell you what's going to happen today. we're going to beat them, and we're going to win the championship. That's what's going to happen today. She says, oh, I understand. I understand. You're confident. That's good. But just in case, I just want to let you know, it's been a great experience for me and for Michael. And I just want to thank. I said, Debbie, we're not losing. There's no chance that we're going to lose. We're going to beat these guys, and we're going to beat them pretty handily. I was, and it wasn't false bravado. I was absolutely confident. Of course, the interesting thing was the Forest Hills had the best fencer in the city. Was their A1 fencer, the coach's son, and the coach was a Russian. He was a Russian immigrant, and he was one of the Russian national coaches. So you had the Russian national coach on the Forest Hill sideline. You had me. Didn't know anything about fencing a few years ago, on the Townsend Harris sideline, and I was supremely confident that we were going to win. So, and we, of course, we did. Debbie was a big help. The other person that was a big help to the fencing team was Wanda Nix. Wanda Nix is the athletic director, and Wanda, anything I needed, Wanda would get it for me, no matter what it was in terms of equipment, gym time, whatever I needed. I just had to ask Wanda, and it was going to be done. And I would talk to other coaches about their relationship with their athletic directors, and they would all complain about how the athletic directors gave them no help and fencing and nobody cared and this and that. It was all about basketball and football and baseball and what have you. Nobody cared about fencing, and their athletic directors gave them no help. So I was really fortunate. The whole group, we were all really fortunate that Wanda was the athletic director who supported us, because it was a bit of a pain in the neck. Uh, I want to now take a look at that photo album. That photo album is one of my prized possessions. It was given to me by the team. One of the team managers, Alice On, decided after the season was over that she would get photographs of all the different team members, and she would have them write a little note to me, next to their picture, and then they would present that to me as a memento of the season. And I've kept it all these years. It's a wonderful thing. Hadn't looked at it in I don't know how long, many, many years. And I just was looking at it, as I'm kind of getting ready for this. And yeah, get a little emotional because I was very close to the kids on the team. So I just want to kind of go over, show you a couple of photographs, and then kind of look at some of the things that these kids say in what they wrote to me. And I'll leave out the sappy stuff of and I just kind of highlight some of the things. So uh, here's the first photograph. This is Kevin Wu. Uh, Kevin was our captain for 2 years. Junior year, senior year, Kevin was the captain. Uh, Kevin was our number one fencer. And he writes that it was, this is what he wrote to me. He says, "Dear our most fine superior." That's how he referred to me. So that was kind of funny. Great 4 years. He says, "I've come a long way since screwing in nuts and bolts." He started out freshman year. He didn't want to try out for the team. He wanted to be part of the team, but he didn't want to try out for it. I said, well, I could always use managers, and the equipment is a pain in the neck to maintain. It's all this electrical stuff, wires break, got to be soldered back together, and all this other stuff. So I said, you have any facility? He said, yeah, I could probably do a little bit of that. So he was our fencing manager, our equipment manager, I should say, his freshman year. Then toward the end of the year, I said, hey, come on, put on a jacket, a lame, a mask, get out there, and let's see if you learned anything. Sitting on the sidelines. And it turns out he's like one of the better guys on the team, and he's been sitting on the sidelines. So from that point forward, he became one of our fencers, and became our best fencer, certainly on that championship team. Uh, Next photograph. This is Mike Pasenkoff. This is Debbie's son, and Mike, tried out for the team freshman year, and always got a lot of kids come out as we got better and better. More and more kids wanted to join the fencing team. So I'm having tryouts in the gym, and I got kids all over the place. And Mike was, a little guy as a freshman, and he's never fenced before, and he's got the mask on, and it's kind of too big for his head, but I saw something in him, athletic, that maybe he could possibly pick this up, and maybe in a couple of years he might be able to contribute to the team. So I kept him and another Mike at the same time, about the same size, kept him on the team as well, and they did. They got better and better, and in our championship season, uh, Mike Pasenkoff was my A2 fencer, and Mike, the other Mike, became a B fencer. So they were both in the starting lineup, and they were key guys on that championship team. So that was Mike Pasenkoff. Next guy is Mike Inwald. Here's a photo of Mike. Mike was a very funny kid, and Mike, yeah, I had to kind of keep my eye on Mike at practice, because you never know what he might what crazy thing he might decide to do. Because at practice, a lot of what we did at practice were bouts, and I would officiate the bouts. Not only call the action, but I would coach the kids as we're going on about technique and strategy when you're on the how to read your opponent, all that kind of stuff. So we did that hours and hours and hours. And then the other kids were waiting to come on. They would be doing different drills and so forth. And I can remember one time I turn, and then there's Mike Inward, and he's got two foils in his hands, no mask on, and he's fencing against two people at the same time, like he's a swashbuckler on in a movie or something. And I'm like, what are you doing? First of all, you never pick up a foil to do anything unless you got a mask on. Oh, I'm sorry, coach. I'm sorry, coach. So Mike would do crazy stuff like that. But he was a very good fencer. Became one of my A fencers in his senior year. So he writes me a nice note, uh, saying that it was my confidence in them that kind of spurred them on. And half the time I told him I wasn't so confident. The other half the time I said I was very confident. But he signs it as your sexiest fencer. I never kind of looked at him in that way, but that's how he signed it. And then he signs it Mister 18 seconds. And here's the funny thing: I vaguely remember something about that, but I don't really remember what the reference was to Mister 18 seconds. Uh, I don't know. I don't think it's connected with being the sexiest fencer. But in any case, I don't know. Maybe somebody who's watching this will remind me of what Mister 18 Seconds was. Here's another fencer from that team, another one of my B fencers. This is Jason Eng. Here's a photo. Jason was another funny guy, I thought. He had a kind of a very dry sense of humor. But here's I don't know if you can see it. Here's what he wrote, and I showed it to you because he writes, uh, thanks for all the time and your fine tutelage. He says, I think I'm the only one who crossed out. he crossed out. He crossed out at the top. I think I'm the only one that crossed out, just like me, the sucky one. No, he's not the sucky one. He was that was his humor. He was a great kid. They all were. I put a lot of time in with these guys, and I wouldn't have done it if they weren't terrific. We would practice in that year. We were practicing before school. We were practicing after school. We would practice in the before school in the morning. If we had a match in the afternoon, we put in a lot of time. Gladys ran a couple of tournaments. I made sure that my guys were always in those tournaments, and I would go to those tournaments with them as well, because I felt like you know they deserve the effort, and so we put the effort in. Here's another one of my fencers. Is one of my C fencers, also a senior. Kevin was a senior, Jason a senior, and this is Henry Wong, also a senior. And he he puts under his signature in quotation marks tipless crane boy, and I remember that reference with fencing at Van Buren, and he's backing up on the strip, and if you step off the strip, you're gonna have a touch against you. So he holds his foil like this, and he goes up on one leg. If you remember the Karate Kid doing the crane move, that's what he did, and then he counterattacks. He lands, but there's no light goes off, and then we discover that the tip on his foil, the tip it's like a button. It's like pressing a doorbell. Completes the circuit, and that's what sends the electricity. Get the light goes off. Without the tip, no light is going off. So that was Henry, the tipless crane boy. Uh, Next fencer, see a photo here of John Vafiatis. John was my C2 fencer, so he was the sixth man in the lineup, so to speak. But quite frankly, what gave us the edge over every team in the city were the quality of our B and C fencers, because there wasn't much difference between our A fencers, our B fencers, and our C fencers. We were kind of solid top to bottom. Other schools would have like maybe really good, A fencers, maybe one. Like Forest Hills had this. The kid never lost their A1 fencer, but the rest of the team, there was a huge drop off in talent, and ours were pretty solid all the way through. So John was the C2, and he talks about thanking me for giving me a chance to be a starter and all the pep talks and so forth, and then he says, and for understanding all the broken foils. He broke more foils than anybody else. He would on the at the grip is where the wiring would be, and he had a tendency to turn it. Guys would bend it, make sure that the foil was nice and flexible, had the right bend that they liked. People liked it more or less. And he would twist the handle. And whenever he twisted the grip, I should say, when he twisted the grip, he was breaking wires. And so he was constantly breaking foils. So he reminded me of that, for being understanding of that. Fencing, at that time, I don't think it's any longer the case, but at that time it was a co-ed sport. So we had girls and boys fencing. So I didn't have any girls that started that year, but my number 7 fencer was Nicole Zucchelli. Here's a photograph of Nicole. Uh, Nicole, I used to drive Kevin and Nicole home after matches and practices, because Kevin, I lived a block away from me, and Nicole lived maybe 5 minutes from my house. So I would drive those guys home, and we would talk. We became close. So her note to me, she says, "Dear, almost best friend," and she says, "Hey, they were my touches." This goes back to a one of the tournaments that we were in. Gladys ran a girls tournament, and so of course I entered Nicole, and I had a couple of other girls that were on the team. I entered them as well. And so Nicole was getting ready to get onto the strip to fence this girl Susie from Cardozo, very cute girl, nice kid, I guess. We hated them because they were from Cardozo. So I'm hooking up Nicole, getting her, plugged into the reel. And I said, "Hey, you beat Susie, and I'll be your best friend." So she laughs, and they fence. And a couple calls went against her that she really, I thought won. She thought she won, but the calls went the other way. And so Susie ended up winning. So that's why she referred to herself from that point on as my almost best friend, because she really did beat her, and I said she'd be my best friend if she beat her. Uh, another girl on the team was Melissa Gibellaro, and here is a picture of her. She fenced a little bit. She got into a couple. I used her in a couple of matches. I subbed her in a couple of times. But she refers to herself as the cheerleader extraordinaire in the note that she wrote to me, and she was the one. I'm fairly certain of this. I could be wrong, but we had a mascot. We had a Tickle Me Elmo. If you remember Tickle Me Elmo from back in the day, we had a red Tickle Me Elmo that would come to every one of our matches and would be right on the scorer's table, at every match. And I'm pretty sure she's the one that started that with the Tickle Me Elmo mascot. Uh, and then another fencer who was one of our subs. He didn't fence a lot. Was Matt Chang. His picture of Matt. Uh, and Matt starts this with, "Boy, I think I should smile more often." And then he goes on and on to express his gratitude for me taking him on the team, and so on and so forth. But he was a good kid. And in the photograph, he's holding, you could see it. I don't know if it came out in the other photograph, but there's Tickle Me Elmo, and Matt's got Tickle Me Elmo in his hand. Another fencer from that team who was a sub is Lyle Blackwood. His picture of Lyle. Uh, Lyle starts his note to me saying, "This is one of the dumbest pictures of me that you will ever see." And then he goes on to thank me for having him on the team. And then he says at the end of it, he says, "P.S. Sorry about the idiotic look on my face. What was I thinking?" In the photograph, just to kind of remind you of the photograph. There's the photograph. I don't think it's such an idiotic look. But he then says, under his signature, Lyle Blackwood, he says, "The only left-handed tackling dummy." And quite frankly, the only reason why Lyle was on the team was because he was left-handed. So he was my token lefty, uh, because other schools had left-handed fencing, and when you're fencing against a lefty, it's everything is kind of reversed. So you need to practice against lefties in order to be able to compete against them confidently when you're out on the strip with them. The last fencer I'll show you is this picture of Jonathan Landisman. His photo of John. John was a freshman on that team who had never fenced before, but he was pretty athletic. So I brought him onto the team, and preseason practices. I remember one day I was not happy with the performance of the fencers. They were not fencing well at all. I stopped the practice, and Jonathan had just finished beating somebody, and I said, "He just beat a couple of you guys, and he shouldn't beat anybody because he's never fenced before." So first he was all happy that I was kind of pointing out that he's won a couple, but then it's like, whoa, no, but he shouldn't win any. You shouldn't beat anybody. You guys are awful if he beats you. So he got a kind of a kick out of that. But he stuck with it, and again he subbed in a couple of matches, and he was very good for us. And then finally uh, is two of my managers. I had a bunch of managers, but these were my two of my senior managers. Here's a photograph of them. This is Jesse and Maureen. Uh, Jesse and Maureen were just wonderful. I can't. It, Managers are so valuable to me because they take care of all, and there's a ton of paperwork. They take care of all the paperwork. They make sure all that stuff is organized. They're the ones that are going to be scorekeepers during the matches. They make sure everything goes smoothly. I can just worry about the fencers, don't have to worry about anything else. I told my fencers on more than one occasion that I would take a quality manager over a quality fencer any day of the week because the manager is going to make my job so much easier. And these two were just absolutely terrific. Maureen, she was about maybe 5'2", and we're at a playoff match against Forest Hills, the one match that we lost that season, and she was scorekeeping, and each team was supposed to provide a scorekeeper. And Forest Hills didn't have one, so it was just Maureen keeping score. So the ref, the official asks. The official also tries to keep the score in his hand. It's 5 touches, and you win the bout. And he lost the count, so he asked Maureen for the score. Maureen gives him the score, and the Russian Vladimir, the coach at Forest Hills, who was a nice guy, but we got into it here. He says, "No, that's not the score," and he corrects her. Uh, and she says, "No, the score is what I just told you." And he was taking a touch away from us, giving it to them. And she says, "No," and he starts yelling. And I was talking to one of my kids, and then I hear the yell. I go, "What's going on?" And he's yelling at her. And I said, "Hey, you can't yell." And now we have a shouting match going back and forth. Maureen stood her ground. She wasn't gonna bend to this guy. I was screaming at him. He was screaming at me. Gladys comes over. Rose Corton, who was one of the top people in the PSAL, she came over. Tony, calm down, calm down, calm down. And they push him away, and it's what's going on. And so Maureen was right, and she stood her ground, and I was very glad that she did. Uh, you can see behind me, I have the jacket from our '97 championship team, proudly displayed. I can tell you that championship banner. I want to show you one other photo. Uh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was the last the last photo to show you in this segment. I'm sorry. In any event, that fencing banner, that championship banner. Here's a photo of it. I'll show you a picture of it again. That banner hung. We got that in November, and that banner hung in my living room for a couple of weeks, right through Thanksgiving. That banner was hanging up, and if memory serves me, and hopefully maybe one of my fencers sees this and they'll remind me if I got this right or not. But I'm fairly certain that what I did was take that banner to a local place and have everybody's name embroidered on the banner. And then I think we put I had them put a pocket behind it, and I think the kids put in a team picture or photographs of each of them, or notes from them, something on the back of the banner, so that the thinking was that at some point when someone takes that banner down, at who knows when, they'll discover what's in the back of it, and then it'll be like a time capsule kind of a thing. I have a vague recollection of that. Maybe somebody could clue me in. All right, so that's really a little bit about fencing. There's so much more I could talk about. But I'm gonna leave it right here. So thank you, fencers, for some of the fondest memories I have of my years in high school. All right, next time we're gonna take a look at something completely different, pranks. All right, so Happy New Year, and you'll see me next time, even though